Okay, thank you. We will close that recess and open the meeting back up at 7:40 here and continue on with where we were, and we'll turn it back to the applicants. Is there an amended application here?
I just have one last question before we discuss what we talked about. So if we did go back to what we had and we asked for a deck, if the deck is a no, do we still lose that applicant for building what we already had? Or would you just deny the deck, but we could still have the cabin? Is
Well,
it
it
all or
depends on
none
what-
package deal,
Depends on what you want to ask for.
the deck?
So if you,
It would just basically be the same, like we're asking, like that 8 foot by, 8 foot out by,
so if you're
28.
asking to amend your application for consideration of a one-story cabin, 45 feet from the lake, then the next question would be, are you asking for a 10 by 28 deck? Or are you asking for what you had before? Because what you had before, you don't need a variance to do. That's
Yeah, no, this would
essentially a
be a-
landing with steps.
this would be a,
No,
this would be a
would
deck.
Because that's what we had planned.
Okay,
A deck.
so then you would need a variance for that, and then that's what you would indicate to the board. If, usually they're going to vote on your entire request. They're not gonna divide that.
So we'd have to separate it.
It may kill your project, but then keep in mind that you can put a patio in 50 feet from the lake, and that would need to be off to the side. You wouldn't need any variances or anything for that.
What's
So-
the setbacks from the road for that?
10 feet,
Oh,
For a patio?
yeah. So
Is that
that's
road- from the road
something
right
that
away?
if you're looking for something alongside, I think that could be, if you wanted a patio, if you meet that 50-foot setback and your impervious surface works, which it does, you do have the option of putting in a patio without any variance. And so,
50 foot and back? Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And you still could have that 32 square foot landing off the front on the lakeside to get yourself, out of the cabin and down. So that would not need a variance either.
Okay.
so it would be replacing exactly what we had.
Correct.
Right, the steps going up.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, yeah, just
So
the
it would be,
steps.
so essentially, if you wanted to amend your application for their consideration of a 28 by 24 one-story cabin,
Yes.
Yes, yeah,
is that what you would like to amend the
Yeah.
request to?
yeah.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna amend, the applicant has amended their request for consideration of a 28 by 24 one-story cabin. That's what's before you for consideration,
Without a deck.
without a deck. Do you want to move to public?
Yep, we'll move to the public comment right now. So anybody in the audience wishing to speak to the application or discussion, please go up to the mic, state your name and address for the record, and state your facts. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this? Anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this? We will now close this portion of the meeting to the public and move back to the finding of fact criteria. But before we do, board members, any final comments, questions?
No, sir, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Question number 1. Is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance? George?
Yes, it is. I think they're going to be rebuilding a cabin that was destroyed by a flood of Lake Chaminade. It will not increase intensity, and it should fall within the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance. Even though it is 45 feet from the lake, it is where the old cabin once stood.
Thank you. Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Clint?
Yes, they're trying to make a bad situation better. They're just basically rebuilding what was already there with some improvements that have done already to not only their structure but also to the lake. I think they've done a lot of good due diligence trying to make this work. Apologize if there's any hardships that's been caused by our board or the county, but I think they worked really hard on doing this. So I do think it's very reasonable for what they're asking for.
Thank you, Clint. Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? That one goes to me. It certainly does. If you go up and down the lake shore and the road there, that cabin will fit in and look similar to the rest of the cabins that are located on that specific road. Anybody else?
I would just add, Mr. Chair, that they're all non-conforming lots. It's a modest cabin that they have no building envelope on, goes with the reasonableness of what they're trying to do. And then with what's along that shoreline, I think it maintains the essential character quite well.
Thank you, Clint. Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
Yes, I believe it is. The one big thing, no building envelope. And what they did is, they combined 2 lots and tried to make it buildable, and they're trying to work within there. So, they've been dealing with some issues here, and obviously, the flood, the ice that did damage to the building, also created some unique situations.
Thank you, Marv. Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Brent?
Well, I think it is. We've got acts of nature here. There was rising water over many years. I think everybody in Morrison County now is aware of the Lake Chaminade issues and the fix that's taken place up there, hopefully, to address that. So all of those actions are other than the landowners or prior landowners. So, and they should have a right to rebuild what they had. Granted, they lost that over a time period, but there's some unique circumstances there. So, I think that answers that question.
Thank you, Brent. Question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? George?
Yes, it does. They're just trying to rebuild what was lost due to the rising lake level. They've already stuck a lot of money into this, and they really don't have much right now except a foundation. So yeah, it is more than economic. It's just wanting to get back what they once had.
Thank you, George. Okay. We'll go to the vote here. Question 1, is the request in harmony with the general purposes and intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance and Comprehensive Plan? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
Yes,
Brent?
Yes.
Question 2, is the applicant proposing to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the Land Use Ordinance? Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
yes,
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Question 3, will the issuance of the variance maintain the essential character of the locality? John is yes. Marv?
yes,
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
Question 4, is the alleged practical difficulty due to circumstances unique to the property? Marv?
yes,
Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Question 5, is the need for the variance created by actions other than the landowner or prior landowners? Brent?
Yes.
George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
yes,
Question 6, does the alleged practical difficulty involve more than just economic considerations? George?
Yes.
Clint?
Yes.
John is yes. Marv?
yes,
Brent?
Yes.
All of the questions have been answered in the affirmative.
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
I'd make a motion that we approve this request with no conditions.
I will second that.
Motion was made by Clint Catherine, seconded by Marvin to approve the requested variance. All in favor? Brent?
Aye.
George?
Aye.
Marv?
Aye,
Clint?
Aye.
John is aye. Motion approved to request the variance with no conditions. Thank you, applicants.
Good luck with it.
Thank you. Okay, agenda item number 2, Parkview Acres, Jacob Carroll, 17705, 133rd Street, Little Falls. Application for variance to exceed the maximum unit cap and be within the side property line located in Little Falls Township. Applicants, please come to up here to the front chairs and state your name for the record.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
At this time, I'm going to recuse myself from this application due to my relationship with the applicant.
Is there any, are you related?
No. My relationship with them.
Okay.
I work for them part-time.
Okay. Yep, good to go. Thanks for coming. Oh, wait, we need him back for minutes and stuff? Oh, good enough.
My name is Jacob Carroll.
Jacob Carroll?
Brooke Carroll.
Ron Miller.
Okay. Staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
This is a variance request to exceed the feedlot animal unit cap and encroach on setback from a property line with 2 manure pits. This is located in section 23 of Little Falls Township. The ordinance reference for this request is 1209.1 and 1209.4. Here's a plat map of Little Falls Township, and here's the location of the property indicated with a red dot. And then here's the variance application received from the applicant. And then some site drawings also provided by the applicant. Here's an aerial photograph of the property with the parcels we're talking about tonight outlined in blue and yellow. And then here's some site photographs taken at the viewing on the 11th of October. Again, the properties in section 23 of Little Falls Township. The parcels identified within the application are known as Enchanted Dairy. This is part of a more extensive dairy operation across several parcels. So here is all of the parcels that make up this dairy outlined in blue and yellow. Enchanted Dairy consists of 2 parcels totaling 120 acres. According to the last registration, a Tier 4 dairy feedlot with 2,625 animal units currently exists on the site. For Minnesota feedlot regulations, this site is under MPCA jurisdiction and is considered a concentrated animal feeding operation, also known as a CAFO. This site is still subject to local ordinance and permitting for expansion and setbacks. The applicant requests 2 variances from the Morrison County ordinance. The first is to exceed the allowable animal units of 2,500. The applicant requests to increase to 5,000 animal units. And then 2, to encroach on the south property line with 2 manure pits. The required setback is 200 feet and the requested setback is 100. As far back as the MPCA could see, the current feedlot has been registered for an overage of 125 animal units. This overage of the local animal unit cap does not appear to have been addressed in the past. Following a moratorium on the permitting of large-scale feedlots in July 1998, the County Board of Commissioners adopted large-scale feedlot requirements and performance standards, which included a 1,500 animal unit cap in August 1998. In doing so, they created a statement of conclusions and rationale for the standards. In 2008, the animal unit cap was increased to 2,500, which is the current standard. Let's see if I can get there. Okay, the south property line of the farm is shared with Morrison County. The county utilizes that property for landfill operations. And the Public Works Director submitted a comment letter And I'll read that in a bit. And there's that letter. If the variances are granted, the property owner must apply for a conditional use permit to expand the feedlot and pursue state permitting for the site expansion. The applicable comprehensive land use plan goals is agriculture goal A1, objective 1, and objective 8, goal A2, goal A3, and A4, and objective 1. And then natural resources and open spaces, goal C3, objectives 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then the comprehensive water plan goals and objectives is groundwater, goal 1 and 2, surface water goal, objective A, land use and development goal, objective A. 11 notices were sent and 2 comments were received before the hearing. One was from the county engineer and one was from Little Falls Township. I will read both. So the first one is from Tony Hennon, and he is the director of the Morrison County Public Works Department. Please review my comments below on the Enchanted Dairy application for variance at property IDs 1636 and 16359. To be heard at the October 15th, 2024 Board of Adjustment meeting. Directly south of the Enchanted Dairy lies the Morrison County Solid Waste Management Facility. This site was originally permitted in 1970 to the Little Falls Community Sanitary Landfill Board and ceased operation in 1987 due to governance problems. The need for waste disposal spurred the operation of the landfill to commence again in 1989 under an agreement between the MPCA and Morrison County, eventually with Morrison County obtaining ownership of the facility. Since taking over the operation, Morrison County has made numerous improvements to the site infrastructure, allowing the cleanup of prior contaminants and continued responsible waste disposal today. The facility serves all Morrison County residents and businesses in the variety of their disposal needs, accepting a mix of residential, commercial, industrial, and rural wastes, as well as on-site recycling and household hazardous waste acceptance. Enchanted Dairy's variance requests bring up multiple questions and potential concerns that are not addressed in the variance application. The current conditional use permit allows the operation of 2,500 animal units for the site. During this variance and conditional use process issued in 2006, consultant engineers reviewed the site's hydraulic needs and provided data that with proper well placement and water volume use restrictions, the increased pumping to incorporate a Tier 4 facility onto the site would not affect local groundwater, neighboring properties, and the solid waste facility. The current variance request proposes allowance of 5,000 animal units, doubling the current conditional use. The volume of water needed for this operation brings questions and concerns that the dairy's increased rate of pumping may draw contaminants off the MPCA permitted county landfill site or change the water flow of the groundwater, deeming the landfill's corrective action systems ineffective. These concerns were brought to the applicant's attention during the development review team meeting, and additional evaluation criteria was requested from the landfill's hydrologist to ensure the expansion would not negatively affect the landfill. The requested information can be read in the attached email. Some of the items for evaluation include an updated hydraulic site model, evaluation of current hydrogeological conditions, estimate of the radius of influence and drawdown from the increased pumping rate, application of the expected drawdown to observed groundwater levels to evaluate changes in the gradient between the landfill and the dairy, and potential for a long-term pumping test with observation wells to ensure no negative effects would be produced. The second variance to encroach into the setback of the dairy's southern property line brings concern of wastewater contamination into the landfill's network of groundwater monitoring wells. Review of the pond design and contaminant redundancies should be evaluated prior to the allowance of this variance. Enchanted Dairy has been a pillar in the Morrison County agricultural community, and as a neighboring property to the Morrison County Solid Waste Facility, a respectable and cordial neighbor. The questions and concerns presented in the letter do not represent the relationship between the two operations, but by answering and addressing them will ensure responsible and successful operation of both facilities into the future. All right, and then the other comment letter was from Little Falls Township, from the Township Board. The purpose of this letter is to outline the consensus and support for the application for variance by Parkview Acres to exceed the maximum animal unit cap and to be within a side property line. It is the consensus and position of the Little Falls Township Board that this application for variance is an excellent opportunity for the furtherance of an exceptional example of agriculture operations within Morrison County. And with the current exception of the variance requests is certainly in keeping with the intent of the Morrison County Land Use Ordinance, as well as 2020 Little Falls Township Comprehensive Plan. Therefore, the Little Falls Township Board wholly supports approval of these variance requests by the Morrison County Board of Adjustment. There are a number of respects, but certainly not all-inclusive, considered by the Little Falls Township in providing this support. For Little Falls Township in particular, the land use goals are to encourage agricultural activities and promote agricultural endeavors on the most productive land. These variance requests and ensuing project, if approved, are in keeping with the Little Falls Township policy to promote this type of agriculture endeavor. The history of Parkview Acres has been a model example of what new and improved means and methods of operation of a large-scale dairy farm are capable of accomplishing while ensuring the health, safety, and welfare of Morrison County residents, as well as meet the goals of the Morrison County Land Use Plan and the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance. Over the last 25 years of Parkview Acres operations within Little Falls Township, the Township Board has had unique opportunities to observe the development and expansions of Parkview Acres. The members of the board have been afforded the opportunity to tour the facility and without exception had favorable and valuable contact and educational experiences. It is the consensus of the board that Parkview Acres' environmentally sustainable operational methods of large-scale dairy farming are indeed many of the technological developments that the Morrison County Land Use Control Ordinance sought to see institutionalized across time within the county. They only seek to further apply those current methods, coupled with new technological developments, into a modernized, economical, and progressive dairy operation, while also ensuring a sustainable return on investment. To recap, the Little Falls Township Board is in favor of approval of the application for variance by Parkview Acres to exceed the maximum animal unit cap and to be within a side property line. So this is from the Little Falls Township Board. So those are the two public comments I received, and then here are your finding of fact and decision questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Amy. Applicants, anything to add? Revise?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We've sent over a PowerPoint to Amy that we'd like to present to you
Yes.
and the board members to give you a little bit of background and history of the dairy farm itself. I have one of the slides is a little small to see, so I printed that page out for you all.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, and I'll just advance through the slides as you want me to.
We'll give you a thumbs up.
Yeah,
Anytime you-
yeah.
All right. We've already, Mr.
Yeah,
Chair.
you're good.
We've
Floor's
already
yours.
introduced ourselves, but
Yeah.
I'd like to say who I am and who I am to the operation. My name is Jacob Caro. I work in the fields with the crops, and I deal with the financial book work as well. And this is my wife, Brooke.
I am Brooke, as my husband said. I am the veterinarian for the farm, so I'm a veterinarian by training. We moved back here in 2020 to take over the farm and transition it from my father. So I mostly do herd health work, also ensuring that all our standard operating procedures are up to date and protocols are written, so we have a herd health plan, and I work on training for both on our farm for ourselves and our employees, as well as outside the farm for educational purposes.
And I'm on the advisory board and tour guide. We started with my brother Enchanted Dairy back in 2000, and if there's any past questions that you have about the operation, I'm more than glad to answer them for you folks.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then-
Mr. Chair, can I just butt in for a second? Just please make sure you guys get the mic closer. That's all.
Okay.
I'd like to add that we are tenants, and Ron and Marv Miller are our landlords.
So as a farm, we are focused on raising the highest quality animals because these are our future for our dairy. And we are constantly consulting with industry professionals on a regular basis. We have a nutritionist that helps formulate the diets, reproductive specialists that help us manage all our reproductive plans so that we have the correct number of animals, and business financial managers, and then veterinarians. Not only myself, I often am referring to other veterinarians in the field who have a lot more experience than me. So, and I'm lucky enough to be connected to that network. Also, we are working with the University of Minnesota, the veterinary program and the animal science program, to do on-farm studies to help advance the dairy industry. I, as a veterinarian, enjoy doing the on-farm trials because it's a real-life experience. We're real operating dairy here out in the industry. Sometimes university studies, they're great, they're amazing, but it's nice to apply it to a working farm. And also, we are part of the FARM program. The FARM program is Farmers Assuring Responsible Management. That is what it stands for. It was started back in 2009. It's really a great program that anyone can be involved in if they so choose to, but you have to go through all the work. And this program helps ensure that we are producing safe, high-quality milk, and it focuses on animal care, antibiotic stewardship, that there's a biosecurity plan in place, environmental stewardship, and then workforce development. So it was really created to hold dairy farms to the highest standards out there. And then we are also very much environmentally driven. So cow longevity, as I stated in the last one, is very important to us. As with a longer productive life, it allows us to have a reduced environmental footprint. We can achieve this by having fewer replacement cows and thus less feed and manure, and therefore creating a smaller footprint. So this has been one of the main things that has been shifting in the dairy industry throughout the year. We are just becoming more efficient. Also, we have activity to go with that, that is part of that is our reproductive efficiency. So like sex semen came out, that has been huge for the dairy industry. And so that you're only breeding the number of animals that you need. And you have the correct replacement rate. And then genomic testing has been really invaluable because you can select for feed efficient traits as well. We also have activity and rumination collars on each of our animals. This really helps us individualize every cow. We want to try to have our cows have the smallest footprint that it can, and we want to be the most efficient. It's better for her, but it's also better for us and better for the environment. And we are very sustainable with reusing water on the farm. So the water that goes through, it can be reused on our farm up to 4 to 5 times. The water from the plate coolers that goes in to cool the milk, so it can be shipped out. And
Sorry about that.
oh, you were fine.
I had to wake it up.
So we use it to cool our milk, and so that makes sure that we get a good nutritional product out to the plants. And then from there, it goes out either into the barns for drinking water, or we utilize it in our parlor to wash and clean our parlor. So we're using it there again, and then from the wash and cleaning our parlor, that water is recycled into our flush flumes, which we use to clean all the walking alleys for the cows. It keeps the cows cleaner. It reduces hazards for us too, because we have a clean walking lane. So. And then from there, we use it to wash our sand. We have sand bedding on our farm, and so that water is then recapturing the sand and cleaning it. And then from there, we can use it to irrigate our crops as well.
I'd also like to add nutrients for the crops as well. So another thing that we're doing to reuse on the farm is we are reusing our sand bedding. Instead of, it's a lot of more conventional barns use mattresses and sawdust or straw bedding, which ends up in your lagoons and ultimately ends up as organic matter in your fields, but it is still another additive used, where if you're recycling the same sand, you're not hauling that out to the fields, you're capturing that and reusing it over and over and over with that same water. Going on from that, we're always trying to lower greenhouse gas carbon footprint, so we do not agitate our pits any more than we have to. We only pump twice a year, so we enable crusts to build on our pits to lower that. And also our manure is applied immediately instead of spread on top. It is incorporated. So that way we capture as much nutrients as possible, otherwise it will dissipate if you leave it on top of the ground. Reducing tillage is a big part of Morrison County's Soil and Waters Conservation Plan. As you know, we have sandy or highly erodible soils. So if we are not applying manure in the fall, we typically leave our fields undug, unless compaction has been a big issue in the fall. Some falls are worse than others, so you must take that hard pan out. And you know, every time you dig your soil, you're releasing carbon as well. So it's all about capturing carbon. And as far as energy reduction goes, you know, we are on 3-phase electric. We utilize LED lights. We're controlled off-peak by the power companies. And we also utilize VFDs to control many of our pumps and fans and motors throughout the farm. So when they are not needed to run at full capacity, that we are able to dial those back or even shut them off. So much of our fans, for instance, are temperature controlled and phased to turn on in different sequences at different temperatures. You know, the cow gives us the milk, but she also gives us the nutrients we need to feed our crops. And that's kind of where I like to focus myself on the dairy. I grew up on a crop farm down in Marshall, and it's just more of my passion, where Brooks is the cows. So it kind of works pretty well that way for us. So we raise corn, sorghum, alfalfa, soybeans, and reed canary or ditch hay on our farm, all utilized to feed the animals we raise. None of it is sold and exported to different countries or commercially. The only thing that gets trucked off or nothing is leaves our farm. It leaves in a tank. It comes out of our bulk tank. Everything is utilized to make a final product, which is milk. This is a video, which to the audience might be small, but to you guys, it was probably 2 years ago that this was taken. I was taking over for Ron early one morning, and I just want to point out the size of machinery that we're using now, and how efficient. Oh, it's already up. How efficiently you can harvest your crops, where in years past it would take weeks, 3 to 4 weeks to get our silage out of the fields. Now we are able to cut that in less than 10 days to 2 weeks, which cuts back on traffic on the roads. It may not be less traffic, but it's less time of that traffic, right? So road safety is a big concern of ours during our harvest season. So to combat with that as well, to speed things up, I've hired custom crews to come in and supplement our chopping during that season. It is not only about public, but it's about our employees too. So as that chopping season draws on and we chop 22 hours a day, our drivers and anyone working on the farm as well at the same time get fatigued. And when people get fatigued is when accidents happen. So I'd like to add, and this is another video of us chopping hay. So I didn't talk about crop quality. So when you're able to harvest that crop in a more timely manner, you're catching your crop at a more ripened stage, optimum for feed, right? So that's what we're after here, is to grow more with less. So using the land we have in our portfolio and taking what it can give us, if we're able to harvest that in a more timely manner, it ultimately ends up for more pounds in the bulk tank. And it all just benefits us in the end. So this is a video of us taking a crop of hay. That truck you see in the front is a water truck. So we utilize a water truck to cut back on a lot of leaf loss, or the protein that is in those leaves. So if we can capture that, we're able to bring back more to the farm and not have it blow away as dust, which it often does get too dry. And as well, crop quality, right? So we're feeding on the same acres, getting more nutrient-dense feed off the same land. This is a neighbor of ours, Eric's moving trucking into a silage truck. Again, just wanted to pose that the size of equipment we have cuts back on the time and the use of our roadways. Haylage crop used to take 7 days to 7 days, maybe more, depending if there was a rain. We have got it down to 3. So reducing that by half again. We also utilize pastures for our bred heifers during the summer months. It's just a good use of feed that's out there, and we have them. So, Ron, do you want to talk about nutrient management a little bit, or should I roll?
Go ahead.
Okay. So, a lot of people refer to cow manure as waste. We think it's an opportunity. And for us, applying that to the land is a huge benefit. So we provide natural fertilizers to our cropland as well as neighbors, right? So we have people we work with that receive this manure, and we've got actually to the point where we are reducing the manure applied to our land to supplement some of the neighbors' needs as well, because when commercial fertilizers were really expensive the last 3 years, everybody came to us, and I think once they got a taste of how nutrient dense and how much organic matter there is in our manure, that it really stuck on. So it goes a long way. So our manure is stored in a HDP lined pond, a heavy duty plastic, which reduces a lot, if not all, of any leachate coming out from underneath those pits. All right, so I know there was concern from the county about that. So what we have under our pits are inspection tile lines that are underneath. So those pits are lined with tile underneath, and they run to inspection points. This is all regulated by the MPCA, and they have to be inspected monthly. So we're out there looking all the time to see if there is anything running from underneath our pits. In the 20-some years, we have never once found anything. We have never once, at the same time, ever had any waste spill over from a big rain event, 100-year rain event, anything like that. There's always been enough manure space. So moving on to the next point, we inject everything through a drag hose instead of electing to haul with tankers and semis. Now, we do haul some manure to a few fields that are just out of the reach with the hose, but we prefer to put everything through the hose. It's a cost standpoint, and then it keeps traffic off of our roads. We do have pen packs, so we have open lots on a site we call the Hill, as well as a few on the Parkview site. Those are stored in temporary stacking slabs and then hauled out to the fields further that the drag line or trucks do not reach. And we alternate fields on a yearly basis, so we're not always applying to the same field. But that gets stockpiled on the field and then applied in the spring when it can be most utilized. We never apply on top during the winters. We never apply on top on the fall and don't work it in. It's not something we do. You just lose all your nutrients to dissipation anyway, and leaching.
And just some community involvement. My dad has been really, and my Uncle Marv, they've always been involved in the community, and so this is something we want to continue to keep going, and we have continued to keep going, because we very much, we live and breathe in this community as well, and we are very passionate about agriculture, and we would like to share that passion with others, especially as less and less people have an association to a farm or a dairy farm. So every year we donate milk to the Kinship Morrison County Youth Mentoring Chili Cook-Off, so all that milk there is donated by us. We also donate the straw every year to the Triple S pumpkins for the kids to climb on in the slide area. And we also donate manure, some manure to the Little Falls FFA field. And as I said, we're passionate about educating, so educational tours that we have done throughout the years. I believe my dad has done many more of this, but these are just some of the highlights with MPCA, Minnesota Physicians, the Little Falls Public School, Land O'Lakes, NFL Gen Youth, and also having the Minnesota Viking players out on our farm. And so that is something we'd like to continue with this expansion. We want to keep this going, and so we'd like to create a viewing room that's open to the public above the milking parlor. Sometimes during these tours, I mean, it's taking time away from, we're also working on the farm, so it takes time away, but we are passionate about and we feel it's important. And having a viewing room will keep everyone safe, and it won't distract the cows because they notice changes, and it's supposed to be a relaxing event, and sometimes if people are staring or trying to like touch them, they get freaked out. So it's just as well a safety issue because there's so many moving parts, and so this would keep everyone safe.
All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about the timeline that I see happening. So the reason I am asking for this variance from the county is due to the necessity for a new parlor. We are in need of a new parlor. Parlors last 24, or ours is 24 years old right now. The new parlors are building are 30 years old. So what I need to do is imagine our farm 20 to 30 years from now. Although it may not be full to capacity until the next 10 to 15 years, but I still need to plan for basically the rest of our farming career. So this is why we're in front of you today. You know, I have proposed a phase 1 and phase 2 timeline for our needs, and this is internally planning, right? But I want to make it open to the members of the board and the county as to why I need this. So, you know, phase 1 is approximately 1,000 animal units. And that number fits our crop and nutrient management plan at the time. And so we know we can handle that. Phase 2 would, in additional years' time, we need to be able to, you know, of course, acquire more land to put nutrients, manure on, and as well as make sure we can manage that many animals. So the growth over this farm from 2000 to 2024 has been slow. We plan to mimic that because we don't want to bite off more than we can handle to begin with. However, due to the consequences we're in, we need to plan for the next 30 years. So that is why we are proposing 2 phases, and I wanted to make it clear to you. My final animal unit number after phase 2 is going to be 4,615. I am asking for 5,000. This is a timeline of those animal unit increases that I passed out to you guys. It just kind of spells out, you know, number of cattle by lactation in animal units, all right? And I do want to point out to you guys that the MPCA may have me permitted for 2,610 animals. I've never had that many animals. On the bottom there is my animal units right now, and that was as of June. We started planning this quite a while ago, but we're at the same numbers today. And I am under, what is that number, 20?
Under 2,500.
Yeah, I'm under 2,500. The reason we are so much lower right now is because of the use of sex semen. All right, so we've been raising less animals on our sites, and so along with that, what Brooke and I have chosen to do, because we want to ship solids, not fluids, we have started breeding jerseys. So our herd has 15% jersey in it now, which is 1 animal unit. So that's allowed us to decrease animal units over time. We've always been really close to 2,500, but now it's becoming much less. And that reverberates through all of our other sites. All right, so we're taking pressure off these other sites because of the efficiency of raising less heifers through sex semen. We are 75% beef and a quarter sex semen. Also becoming, raise more with less, do more with less. So this slide just is kind of my plan. It's not, it's a plan for growth over the next 10 years. So the cows and heifers were bred in the spring of '24. We have started breeding for this. And it's over an 18-month period of when we are breeding these animals. So it's going to be a slow progression of adding animals. We do not want to have a balloon period where all of a sudden our animal units increase and then regress. So that means the final heifer calves born from these breedings will be in the summer of 2026, 2 years from now. Once those animals are born, they won't actually enter the lactating herd until 2027. Okay, so a project like this takes a lot of forethought and planning. It's not like these animals are going to show up tomorrow, but it is very important to us to have this all in place. And obviously the last one will come 18 months later after the winter of 27, so that's summer of 28. Phase 2 will be a repeat of phase 1. Hopefully starting sometime in 2027, if we feel that we are capable of handling the animal units and work necessary for this at that time. Or do we need a couple more years to get our feet under us and then, do it after that? So a little bit about this slide shows the vicinity of our milking center, which is on, so the barn is the phase 1 and phase 2. Phase 1 is all blue, phase 2 is yellow. So with phase 1 comes a new milking parlor and holding area, as well as a confinement barn. And that'll be to the north of the existing facility now, with a lagoon or wastewater pit on the south side of the property. Now, we have explored options of putting our pits on the north, but due to setbacks from road right-of-ways and land use, we feel that having it tied in with our current pit system and as close as we possibly can to it would be the best use of our land, since dairy's footprint has a significant scale. You really need to lay things out in the right manner.
And,
No, I was going to wrap it up.
oh, you can go back to, unless you had.
That one?
Okay. Yeah, so we just wanted to thank you for your consideration and just, this is a family farm. Like us growing to this side, it was my dad's. Before that, it was my grandpa's, and before that was my great-grandparents. So we've been here for 4 generations. We hope to pass it on to 5 generations. And just with the way the dairy industry in general has been going the past couple of years, a lot of farms have gone out, a lot of smaller farms, and now, we may seem large, but really, if you look at in the grand scope of things, we are now becoming more of the smaller farm. When I worked out in South Dakota, most of those dairies were immigrants from California. Just because of the population pressure there, they were moving to South Dakota, and they were building 5,000 plus head milking farms. And so being able to work out there was really eye-opening, as well as throughout my veterinary career. I've toured the U.S., and it's really neat to see how far agriculture in general has come, and especially the dairy. And we are so much more environmentally friendly now, and so much more sustainable than we were even 50 years ago. And so I know those improvements are going to continue in the dairy industry, and it's really exciting to see that, and I hope we get to be a part of that.
And I wanted to say, I think that with technology that's happening today, 20 years ago, we thought, this was the max we could handle. But today's technologies have been improved to the point where this 5,000 animal unit cap seems reasonable. Back in the day, I was on the planning and zoning when we put the 2,500 animal unit cap in. And it ended up, a number that was everybody felt comfortable with. It's not based on any science or anything. It was like, we moved it from 1,500, we moved it to 2,500. And it seemed reasonable. Today, with the technology, 5,000 seems reasonable. And with the milking facilities, with the technology and the application of manure, there's meters on those tractors that are applying the manure that there's like, I forget, 1,000 readings a second that's analyzing that manure. And they program it in their tractors where if they're applying for phosphorus and you say, hey, I want 80 units of phosphorus, that tractor will go and testing that manure, so it's applying that. And as far as facilities to milk 3,600 cows or whatever the number is, they have parlors now that can handle it. Back in the day, when we were first starting with buckets, you thought, 40 cows was enough. But technology has advanced where it seems logical and reasonable to ask for 5,000 animal units. There's restraints on the site when we built it, as you've seen earlier, that there's wetlands and stuff, and we matched our pit and set this dairy up on the facilities to meet the setbacks and to stay so many feet away from, at that time, the setbacks were a lot larger from site to site. And so between the Parkview site and the Enchanted site, the barn had to be placed at that many feet from the non-feedlot residents. So you take it and you measure it, this is where it has to be. We got to stay this far away from that wetland. And so that was the reasoning for the setting of the initial Enchanted. So I think that, what we're asking tonight for this variance seems reasonable, and we will have the questions submitted to you and the answers that Brooke and Jake have provided. And I think that you will find it reasonable.
I'd like to have a few closing comments as well. I believe it was our farm that had asked for the animal unit increase each time. And each time we've made a great example. And I've worked on other dairy farms. Brooke and I have been touring many dairy farms. I come from a farming agricultural area of the state without dairy. But I found it pleasing and enjoyable farming up here over the past 13 years with the Millers. And I would have to say to you guys that if there is any farm in this county that can lead forward this animal unit increase, look at what our record shows in the past. Look at all of our accolades. Look at the things we have done to be stewards of the land and good stewards to our community, our neighbors, and everyone around us. You walk around, you go to our neighbors, you ask them if they have anything to say about us, and I don't think you'll find a bad thing. All right, so please consider this with your deepest thought that what we are doing here has been proven, that we can do it and we are able to handle what we are requesting. Thank you.
Thank you, applicants. Obviously, a lot of work and time and effort has been put into that, so that's appreciated on behalf of the board. I'm going to open up to the board now for questions and comments.
Mr. Chair. So first, I have a comment, or just some information before it might be pertinent to what I'm gonna come up with on some of my answers. In 2024, Minnesota has 2,600 dairy farms. In the last year, they lost 146. Morrison County lost 21 dairies last year, okay? And the reason they lost them, this is a study that I found from Minnesota Department of Ag, so anybody can look it up. It's from industry standards. Low margins, poor industry regulations, bad policy, price fluctuation in the market, and then the input cost. So with Morrison County, we were in 2022, we were third in dairy. We were second in dairy. This year, we're third because of the lost dairies that we had. So when you get into these bigger, we're going to say bigger farms, it's no different than a little one. The low margins, we see big cost of machinery. That chopper Jake was showing us is probably $1 million, correct? Somewhere in there. So you got to spread cost out to do all that stuff to maintain things and be efficient. Okay, so Brooke answered one of my questions I had. If you were third or fourth generation, you said fourth. Did you get to the Century Farm yet? Not quite.
1946, my grandfather moved
Okay,
up
so
here.
we're getting there. You guys will probably see that. That's almost getting to be unheard of anymore. Okay? And then, how many years have you kind of been heading up, Jake and Brooke? How many years have you guys kind of been transitioning to take over?
I came up here in 2011 and started working with the Millers on their dairy farm. And, in 2012, we became part owners, just only slightly. But it's been almost 12 years.
Okay. Because I don't know how hard or how much information the board has or the public on how huge and how troubling it is in the ag industry for transitions right now in this country for farms. I don't think anybody knows. We're not going to get into that, but I just want people to get an idea that that is a tremendous struggle in its own. Got a question for probably Amy. Are the applicants in good standing with the county?
Yes, they are.
Okay, has there been any compliance problems or violations in the past that you know of?
So from a feedlot standpoint, we do not inspect this facility.
Yep.
But the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, even though they're responsible for inspecting them, they certainly communicate with us if there are any issues on any feedlot within the county. I have not been made aware that there are any compliance issues on this site.
Okay. And then one comment I had, I'll have to dig through, I'll let these other guys answer ask some more questions. I got to dig through my stuff. But just one thing, I think Jake probably did it. I just had a comment. Dairy production requires significant footprint to operate an efficient and environmentally conscious operation. So there's something to consider. And I'll end it with that for right now.
Thank you, Clint.
Mr. Chair,
Brent?
I got a couple of questions, and they'll vary. Some are going to be for Amy, some will be for the applicants here. Amy, do you, off the top of your head, know how many Tier 4 feedlots we have in the county?
Dairy or just tier 4 in
Dairy.
general? Dairy, I'd probably say maybe 3, 4.
Okay. Thank you. Comment for the applicants here. I think probably the easiest way for me to sum up your operation out there as opposed to maybe a lot of the family farms that exist. There's flip foam farms and there's smart farms. You got a smart farm and you're operating it that way, and that's kudos to everybody in the past that's brought it up. It seems to me that one of the biggest questions here is going to be the locality of this, the water draw of this, the implications to the landfill for the county. That seems to me to be kind of a concern of the letter that Amy read tonight from Public Works, and I've got a few questions for whoever can answer it. I'm not going to address it to anyone in particular, but if who's ever best suited for it, I'd appreciate, just filling me in. With regard to the water, I think I read somewhere in here over the last week or so that the proposed animal unit increase to 5,000 is going to require approximately 40,000 gallons of water.
Mr. Chair,
40 million.
I need, that was a typo in the dirt. It's 40 million gallons.
I'm not understanding that at all, because I think when the grandkids show up, they use that in a weekend. So thank you for that. The next question is, can any of you explain to me how you feel the expansion of the animal cap will or won't impact the county landfill and or the draw of that potential increase of water to the radius of the area surrounding?
I guess I'll start. So the water draw and what was in the letter of Tony's there for the initial with their consultants, I wonder what wells and where they were thinking we're drawing the water from. Presently, the wells that are on site there that were initially used for the dairy are now just backup wells and only used when the well that's off-site, not associated with the Burden property. The Enchanted site was labeled back when the landfill and the county gave us our first permit back in 2000, was that there were conditions and we had to do a study on the water flow and draw at that time. And it ended up we had drilled wells right alongside of the driveway, and that was used in the study. And since then, those two wells have become the backup wells, and the main well is now not on the Burden property. So with their initial look at it, I'm just wondering what wells they have used. We're using one that's located directly to the east of the dairy across 180th now, which is where we're drawing the water. This past year, as when you were at the site, you had seen that we have abandoned one irrigation well that was permitted for over 45 million gallons to irrigate over just about 200 acres. And we have since drilled a different well to supply those irrigators. And that well, which is located across the road by the dry cow barn, straight north of this site, is we had talked to Mark Anderson about using it as a backup in case the well ever went down at the dairy. We could use that. And his his reaction, I'll let Jake speak to that, but so those were the initial things, I guess, that I wanted to point out about the water use.
Okay.
Can I supplement? Yes, we are drawing from the east right now. I do not believe that the water drawn currently will, or future water will affect the landfill's remediation zone due to the flow of the water and the gradient. So we are uphill from the landfill's operations where they recapture the water to pump back out. As far as, the use of water out of that well, Mark Anderson had told me that it is his position that he would permit the additional water out of what we call the east well. But he would send it to his state advisors to make sure that it would meet requirements. I want to add that I have drilled wells in the property for irrigation to the north and east, and that when the well drillers were drilling my well, they had said they have never seen water come out of a well like that during a pump test. There is an immense amount of water under our feet.
Mr. Chair,
Amy.
they're referencing Mark Anderson, and he's the area hydrologist for the DNR. What he's speaking to is water quantity. His capacity is saying there's enough quantity of water. He's not speaking to how it flows, cone of influence, anything like that. So I just want to clarify that for you.
Sure.
Yeah. We also agree that safe drinking water for our cattle is of the utmost importance. So it is in our best interest not to have contaminated water.
We will not have a dairy if that is the case. Cows need water to survive just like us, so. And there's water filtration systems, like you need good drinking water to run a dairy, so we do not want that as well.
I do want to add that through the construction of this new parlor, we will have large cisterns that will regulate the flow of water. So the water draw right now is around that 40 to 50 gallons a minute. And during peak use times, it might go a little higher than that, 20 gallons more a minute. But during this winter months, it will drop much lower because of the utilization of sprinklers and just heat abatement and cattle drinking more water. So I intend to put in large cisterns to slow the pumping rate during peak uses.
And also, with this expansion, with building a new barn, these newer barns are set up where you don't need sprinklers in them. The heat abatement from the fans and the designs of the barn are just incredible nowadays. So that water usage, we wouldn't need to try to cool our cattle with sprinklers. The fans are really efficient and effective at that with the correct barn design.
Mr. Chair,
Brett?
question back to Amy. Do you know where the landfill groundwater monitoring wells are and how many of those are out there for the county offhand?
No. I'm aware that there is a corrective action system out at the landfill, and it comprises of several different monitoring wells that have been placed based on the movement of the groundwater and the draw from the aquifer that's occurring now. So that has been engineered and placed based on the water usage that's happening. And we work closely with the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency on that remediation program. And so most of that is prescribed by them. And so a change in water draw is what is of concern as far as if the placement of those wells would need to change or be relocated or be expanded or contracted. That's my understanding of what the concern might be.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, kind of along my line of questioning here is the water draw in the area having any adverse effect on the monitoring wells of the landfill that would cause, issues for the county to have to do something different in the future as a result of granting this variance moving forward, when we don't really have a baseline right now in front of us to know for sure. And last week when we were out, you talked about not moving forward with a lot of the water studies because that's going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, I'm sure. And some of what we're tasked with doing here actually requires us to kind of know some of those things up front. And I think there's a process to go through, and we're going through that process. But I wonder at times if we're not putting the cart before the horse when it comes to those issues. And that this is the process to go through. You're coming in front of us for this measure. If granted here, then your next phase of this would be to come back for conditional use, and then there'd be conditions possibly at that point and or a recommendation to the board, and it could ultimately be either granted or shot down by the board. So it's a three-step process. And how much do you put, and how much do we know at this point in granting this variance? And that's hard to know.
Mr. Chair?
Marv?
Well, I'm glad that Brent touched on that. And I wish I could have relieved myself in being in this position because I've been friends with the family for a long time. And I was brought up in a small dairy, and I will say over and over, I've been at their site. They are an absolute model for what dairy should look like. You can go on their site and on their operation, and it's nice, neat, and they do things right. That's why they're here. That's why you want to go through the process to make sure it's correct. And Jake talked about it's going to cost them $250,000 to do this study. Who would want to put up that kind of money? And we're relying on experts. And here we are no experts, it's just the information we get brought forward. I was in the past talking with one of the county commissioners about the water quality that's around a landfill. Our landfill, our county spent a tremendous amount of dollars to get that water where it's at, and you're benefiting by it, but they shoved a tremendous amount of money when they took over that landfill, and it's clean and neat. And as our county engineer, Tony Hennon, had said, you enjoy an excellent relationship. Both stewards do things right. So the other comment is that we're here when we give variances to the land, not to the people, because we know you do an excellent, excellent job. But what would happen if all of a sudden something would happen to one or both of you, and it would be under different ownership? We have to consider that too, and that's what's really a tough piece here. But if it would stay with you, we know it's going to be done right. But you're opening up a real can of worms here, and without a lot of real pertinent information. what we need to make make this pass. That's just my opinion from it, but I think I look at something, one of my former priests, he came from Kenya, and he says, what do you enjoy the most about coming here to the United States? He says, the water. He says, you don't realize what it's like having good, pure, clean water. He says, we don't have it there. And when his friends came from Kenya to seeing the irrigation systems going on the corn and seeing this, he just like, wow, he was just blown away. My son just came back from India, and he talked about how contaminated the water is. And you guys are doing a great job monitoring and making sure you're not having too much phosphorus and everything else, but are we pushing it too far with the soils and this amount of animal units in your area? I don't know. I can't give a good answer to that one. So just comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Marv. Anybody else? We are going to open this up to public comment. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak to this application, please go up to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and we will be listening to your thoughts, opinions, and facts, but we will be considering the facts. Anyone? Yep, go ahead.
Howdy, I'm Jesse Young, 15234 Game Farm Road. And yeah, just wanted to voice my support for Jake and say that, yeah, I think for a lot of the farmers around the area, I'm an alfalfa producer, by the way, having such a large quantity of such a good fertilizer available locally, especially with the prices of commercial fertilizer, is a huge, huge economic benefit for a lot of local farmers in the area. And I think that alone could be just something to consider. You know, it's not just these guys' farm, but it's a lot of these other small local farms that are trying to get by. And you know, with the price of fertilizer, just the manure benefit for me is something that I can see as being very positive for the community. So just wanted to put that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Township, 12662 125th Street, Grove Falls is my address. I have never been more impressed by any hearing that I've ever been at in Morrison County than this hearing tonight by the Miller family. I can't even hardly think of the things to add to the presentation that they made. Just an excellent job. But I would just comment on about 3 points pertaining to the variance requests. One of the questions has to do with, is there any consideration other than monetary? And when you look at a farm like the Millers, I can relate to what Ron said earlier about at one time, one side was right, and as time went on, it changed. Like in 1978, I drew a plan for a class in school. What was my ideal farm? It was 50 cows, and I thought that was all I would ever need because my dad only had 25 and I was doubling it. 10 years later, myself and another dairyman were invited to the Little Falls Chamber Ag Committee to tell us what we thought the future of farming would be like. So lo and behold, just about 12, 13 years later, we presented something to them that showed modern freestall barns, which would be much like the older barn that Jake has now, and the herds of 200 to 400 cows, and we thought, this is the future. And it didn't take much longer. You come to the year 2000, and that's kind of where Ron took over with his size changes. It's just a progression that has to take place. And when I look at a farm like Miller's, those of us that have a few more cows, we're a pretty tight-knit bunch. We feed off each other. And the kind of knowledge that Miller's can bring to the table, it's almost like a U of M demonstration farm. it's something that can be copied and a role model for other farms to look at and respect and utilize those practices. So I think it's essential that their growth be able to continue. I noticed there's also a variance for a setback from the landfill. And I'm not sure why that is, if at one time maybe the landfill needed to encroach on their farm. But I have pretty strong feelings that if anybody ever is granted a variance, that it shouldn't come back and hurt the neighbor in the future. So if the landfill, in fact, it was able to encroach, that encroachment shouldn't come back and hurt the millers. And then as far as the water, I think from what I've heard tonight, I think I could have complete faith that the millers, when they come for their CUP hearing, will have this all pretty well sorted out. And so I don't see that should be any reason not to grant the variance tonight. So I hope you'll vote in favor, and then when they come for their CUP at the water, I'm sure we'll be all addressed properly.
Thank you, sir.
Eugene Young, 14552. I'm Eugene Young, 14552. I got to remember it because I sold my place to my grandson and moved a mile up the road and built a new home. The thing I'd like to address on this water issue is because if you look at the water flow and if you look at where the landfill wells as they follow that plume down toward the Platte River, it flows to the southeast from the landfill. And you look at the amount, like Ron said, they abandoned one well and Jake put in irrigation. They put in irrigation on Selinsky's farm, and if you really look around that landfill, when that landfill was put in to today, I don't think there was 5 irrigation rigs in the county when that thing was put in. And if you drive through the country and look at it today, we talk about drawdown and water flow. And they have the landfill has no say at all when a guy puts a well across the road from them for an irrigation rig. So I don't know, but that's just my opinion, from what I've seen over the years. And getting back to the animal cap, it's a growth factor, like Clint said, we've lost so many dairy farms, and the ones that if you go to Riverside Dairy, you go up to southwestern Minnesota, they got 9,000 head of cattle on one site with 22-acre barns and stuff like that. But I've been to those places too, and they're very well managed, like the Millers. They're paved out, and everything is clean, and all the water is drained off, and when you look at it. So it's called progress, I guess, and growth. We love to see industries come to town, get the tax breaks and everything else, and free land and that to get a business into town. And here we got people that are financing their operation and are good stewards. And so I think, what we really have to do is look what we're going to look to the future. What do we want this county to be? Because we are in the top 5 agricultural counties in the state of Minnesota. And one of the reasons for that is because we got a lot of good farmers that are doing a good job of farming, and they've taken better care of the land. I'm 84 years old, and I can remember when they were raising buckwheat and rye, and we had sandstorms, and we couldn't even see the sun in the daytime when you look at what the land looks like today. So I think the farmers have really been good stewards, and I think all the farmers that are out there today are only there because they are good stewards, otherwise they wouldn't be in business. And I'd like to consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. Yeah. Good evening. I'm Tony Hennon, Morrison County Public Works Director, County Engineer. And I appreciate everyone's consideration. I think there's no question in the kind of operation that the Millers and the Carrolls and the Enchanted Dairy run. It's an efficient and well-organized, clean business. And so the concerns that I want to raise are, without the hydraulic environmental data, make an educated decision on whether or not to allow these variances. If the fact that we make an allowance to allow these variances specific to the water use, and there are negative effects on the landfill, it doesn't directly affect just the landfill. It's going to affect all of the constituents of Morrison County. If we have to rearrange our infrastructure, our CAF system, our monitoring wells, that comes at a considerable cost. And in my opinion, it's not fair to all the constituents of Morrison County to have to bond or utilize their funds for corrective actions based on something outside of our control. So without the data or those professional hydrologists making recommendations to whether or not this specific site can handle that amount of livestock, or the variances on, or the engineering on the stormwater ponds, ensuring that those materials aren't going to flow south to the landfill, I think it's kind of irresponsible not to take those into consideration, because it could have an effect on everyone and not just their operation. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, anybody else in the audience wishing to speak to this application? That's number 2. Anyone?
I will. Is it working now? All right, first mic all night, does that can work. My name is John Tice, Little Falls Township Supervisor, address 11179 170th Avenue, Little Falls. I think one of the things that we got to remember here is that, you know, just like anything, either we got to keep up or get out. Jake and Brooke are saying they got to build a new parlor, right? So they're planning out 10, 15, 20 years, 30 years, how they're going to raise the cow to have the calf that's going to have a jersey all the way down. They've done all that planning in order to pay for a new dairy carousel, you know, in order to dump the stuff. So they're putting their whole life on the line here, saying that they can do this. And I mean, just like who had a BlackBerry 20 years ago? They don't exist because why? They didn't keep up. So either they have to keep up or get out. And me from Little Falls Township, I'd like to see these good stewards of the land stay in Little Falls Township and operate. They can't, this carousel they got here's gonna time out 4 years. They can't afford to put a new one in with the amount of cows they got, so they have to go bigger. Go bigger, go home. It's been that way since I was a child. Keep up or get out. And I don't think that we, in 2002 or 1998, when they said 2,500 animal units, where did they get that? That was a swag. Everybody knows what a swag is, right? A scientific wild ass guess. Because we don't know what 5,000 is gonna be. So how can this board here hold these people back from getting that 5,000 animal units approved so they can go ahead and do the water? They're professionals here. They're not gonna pump bad water. They're not gonna draw it off the landfill. That landfill's was a problem back in 1970. Yes, we put a lot of money in it, a lot of taxpayer dollars went in, but everybody's went into those bad decisions too. Every one of us paid for that, and landfill superfund from the state. So I think we need to progress on this here. I want to thank you for listening to me. Keep up or get out, and we can't afford these people to get out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else in the audience wishing to speak to this application? Any?
I'll speak, please. I don't have a ton to add. I do think there are some concerns, you know, with the hydrology. We don't really want to regress. However, I think it's an exceptional opportunity to try something that's going to further the agriculture and dairy industry within this county. And just to further what John had kind of, I didn't tell you my name, did I?
And address. You can do it at the end, just keep going.
Thank you. Sorry, I get lazy on that. That having been said, I probably could have had a couple other people that would have chimed in. There's a lot of opportunity here, not just as the Enchanted Dairy and the farm itself and the family to keep going, but there's a lot of opportunity within this county to make sure that there's some sort of a test, take sort of a beta kind of thing on dairy industry to keep this furthering and within this particular county and keep our standing in the dairy community. So I just think it's an excellent opportunity to work together and make that happen as best as possible. And like I said, I do understand the hydraulic issues and in and around that a little bit. So, and just to add, the other thing would be is if I think of those people that have been around this particular operation, if they've got any acumen around animals, it is pretty exceptional. It's probably the cleanest operation you've ever seen. And I think that's just an inherent trait on how everything's been done with that farm. So I appreciate it. Chop Herons, 11878 Zebulon Shores Drive, Little Falls Township.
Thank you, sir. Any public comment? Any public comment? Any public comment? We will now close this section of the meeting to the public and go to the finding of fact criteria. Any comments before we start talking about the questions?
Yes, John, I do.
Go.
So this might take just a minute. Hopefully you guys can bear with me and understand where I'm coming from. So part of this is, why did we come up with 2,500 back in '05? Okay, I don't know. But some of the reasoning is, some of the protections that at that time were worried about for the public, okay? Some of them things, this is what we have to go by, why we held it to 2,500. I think some of it's outdated. It could be relooked at. So when I look through this and I look back at the reasons why they put that protection on, a lot of these questions that we're going to answer here, for me anyways, I can mitigate some of that, and I can kind of look through it, and well, you'll see how I'm going to vote. But when we get to the question one, is it in harmony with the ordinances? I think I can come up with an answer to be yes for it all the way through until I get to the water issue, okay? Now, with the landfill, like was stated, I agree with a lot that Mr. Tice has said. Totally agree. But we owe it to the citizens of the county to make sure that they don't have to pay any extra for one entity, okay? We don't know if this is gonna be a problem or not, okay? Without the hydrology and the county engineer signing off on it, he has to take it to his hydrologist, they have to sign off on it, then he can sign off on it, I can sign off on it, okay? Now, the second part, Amy can kind of go, when I'm done with this, she can kind of explain. I had a discussion with her if this is part of the variance part or part of the CUP, okay? Now, it was brought up at the site visit, Jake asked if we could condition this in this meeting tonight, that he would do these studies. It's an awful lot for us to ask of us to figure out the condition, but it's even more of an ask, I believe, for the applicants to come up with that much money to give us this data, right? But I can't answer this question without data, okay? So for the board and everybody here, I'm asking, how do we go about that? We got two problems here. It's I just don't know how you can ask anybody to put that kind of money up front in any issue in this county. But then I don't know how you can ask me to say yes on something I don't know. Okay? So think about that for a minute. Amy, can you talk about why we would have this hydrology portion to the variance and not the CUP part?
When we look at the animal unit cap, it's a direct correlation with the water draw. Increase in animal units is what is at issue as far as the unknown for the hydrology. I guess when we look at it, this is a very unique situation because usually we would only be talking about the policy of the animal unit cap. And why do we have an animal unit cap? What's the purpose of it? Is 5,000 still in harmony with that? But we have this other caveat with this one that's very, very unique. And so when you look at your questions here and you have something in front of you saying, hey, we have other infrastructure that might be impacted by this, we don't know. I don't know how you can answer those questions without some of that data. And so so by design, it has to be considered at the variance because of this. If you went ahead and approved this, you're giving the okay for them to increase up to 2,500 animal units, and then they would go for the conditional use permit to expand their animal units. So you can look at it as, at what point then and who has to require that information. So we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we're not impacting other infrastructure. How does the county board reel that back? So, if the Board of Adjustment ultimately says, no, you can exceed the animal unit cap without knowing how this is impacting anything else, kicking that can down the road to the conditional use permit process doesn't it's like kind of going back on your word, really, or putting that in the county board's lap, or coming up with a new cap for them, which doesn't seem to be fair to the applicant at all either. So it's hard. This is data with any sort of increase like this. This is data that is needed at some point. The big question is when, if it's not here, when you're looking at the operation of increase in animal units, which is what is increasing, they're at the top of what they can be now. They're asking to double that. That is what is going to require the most water, which would have the most influence, or could, on that remediation system. I just don't know when else you would address this.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Go ahead.
So that's why I kind of was asking about that. Like I said, totally get what the applicants, that's just horrendous amount of money for somebody to put up front without any assurances. So that's why I asked the question, if it goes to the CUP, if we'd give a variance tonight, and then they have to have that information when you go to the CUP, or the CUP ain't gonna happen. Because at least they got assurances that can go, if this would go through, and that's the hang up, that in the meantime, that would get taken care of. But if, I don't know, I'm not trying to horse trade, I'm just trying to figure this out.
Mr. Chair, I do want to say too, I don't know that anyone's calling into question the operational prowess of the millers. I think everyone here agrees what an amazing operation it is. It's state of the art. And I think that this would be a much easier, more straightforward decision, because I think, you know, it's not a character flaw. It has nothing to do with how you operate. It has everything to do with this other little, you know, monkey wrench, that this happens to be adjacent to another, to essentially a public utility, which is landfill, and the remediation that is happening there, and the impact that it might have. I mean, that's really what this is coming down to, and so I think we've heard a lot of comment on how fantastic this operation is. I don't think anybody's doubting that. But none of us are hydrologists either. I can't tell you how that water's gonna move. You might have a good feeling with how the water moves, but is that enough? And I guess that's for the Board of Adjustment to decide. Is, I'm pretty sure that it won't. Is that enough for you? I mean, and that's really what it comes down to.
Mr. Chair,
Brent?
I think all of that discussion is right back, kind of what I said before. We're kind of putting the cart before the horse here, and at what point do you address that? And I think it's, yeah, you can kick the can down the road and move it to a conditional use permitting process, and then it just kicks the can down the road some more, and it goes back to the county board for a yes or a no. And I guess for me, it's always been about, you know, at this point, do we have enough information to move forward on the variance? And I don't know what the answer to that is. I don't know for the rest of the board if they have enough information or not, or if there needs to be more information before this board moves forward.
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
again, I'll reiterate, I don't have enough information to answer that question, one, without the hydrology study. But I also think it's horrendous that we make them pay that kind of money up front. So I'm gonna kick it to the applicants, ask you guys the question. What can you tell me about this?
I can tell you that if it's moved to a CUP condition, we will have it prior to the CUP. And the first hurdle here for us is to get the variance. You cannot promise us as a board that you go ahead and spend that money and prove to us that we're not going to affect the landfill remediation process, and you can't say, well, then we'll give you the variance. No, you cannot do that. But if we get the variance, we will, and we do not want to draw contaminated water. We will be 100% sure that we are not affecting that landfill before we come to the CUP. Our word is good. I can guarantee you, we've met every condition. We had how many conditions back in '99 when we first applied for the permit? And we will meet all the conditions, and we will not be affecting the landfill. And the landfill won't be affecting us because we need top quality water. And we base our character on it. Our operation is run that way. Our word is good. And you could put a condition on the variance, maybe or maybe not, I'm not sure, but I can guarantee you that we will meet and we will not be affecting that landfill with any kind of water issue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With that, I would like to recommend a condition that before the CUP meeting, that the hydrology study or some information that would be given to the county engineer, his hydrologist can look at it, they sign off on it, it's good enough for the county engineer to sign off on, and that has to be done before the CUP. That would be my condition.
So, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
so it would be prior to application for the conditional use permit for expansion, the applicant must provide requested hydrological information
Yes.
to the county?
County engineer, so he can turn to his hydrologist, so they can sign off on it or not, and then he can sign off on it. Now, that don't mean this is still gonna pass, okay? So if it would pass, and that condition isn't met, the variance is null and void, okay, just so everybody understands. So everybody knows, I'm as pro-ag as there comes, I'm just trying to work the problem and be fair to the citizens of Morrison County and also the applicants. It's still gonna cost them the money, but they got some assurances that way. We don't know if it's gonna pass yet, I'm just saying.
Any issues with that condition?
No, and that was my recommendation. Thank you.
Perfect.
Mr. Chair.
Brent?
I mean, we have Tony here, and we have a letter, an email from Chris, and there's 5, if you would, conditions that are recommended, I guess. And looking at, if everybody could look at that email, if we're looking at conditions, should we not be providing conditions that are going to help the hydrologist make those determinations and evaluations before we move forward? And so I don't know of any other way to put this, but those conditions have been laid out in an email provided to the county engineer. County engineer has relayed a letter to us, and now we're tasked with trying to move forward, and how do we do that without the information? And so the only way we can do that is to condition it, and we have to come to an agreement as a board of how we're going to condition that. And so I'd like everybody to look at those 5 and try and wrap our heads around that.
Mr. Chair?
Amy?
So how I've written the condition is that they provide the requested hydrological information to the county engineer. I don't know if you want to be more specific than that, because I believe that that is the request of the applicant, what's outlined in that email. So do you want it more dialed in?
I would think if these are the 5 conditions that.
Or the
that are
5 items.
Or the 5 items, then those 5 items should be spelled out, because otherwise it's pretty vague. I don't know that it meets the necessary requirements of Tony to respond back, or for us to get Chris to provide, or who's actually going to provide this.
Right, okay.
Mr. Chair,
Clint?
it goes to my condition, I'll guarantee you, they're gonna go talk to the county engineer and see what they need, okay? What I mean by that condition is, the county engineer is gonna turn it to his hydrologist. If it don't meet that hydrologist's criteria, they're gonna have to go back to the drawing board. They need to have something that the county engineer signs off on by the time we look at a CUP. Okay, so whatever that information is, then we can look at something that's recommended from the county engineer. He's not gonna recommend it until the hydrologist looks at it. So I think that's between the applicants and the county engineer to make sure that, because if they come back and the hydrology report's no good, either they gotta have an alternative way to take care of the water, or they gotta have a good hydrology report. Is that sufficient, Brent? I mean, you understand where I'm coming from on that, or?
No, I get that, and, I'm looking at number 5 here is a long-term pumping test, multiple observation wells. Well, this maybe isn't one, but is 1 through 4 applicable, And I don't want to kick the can down to the CUP, because we aren't at the CUP. We're at the Board of Adjustment tonight, and we should be addressing conditions for Board of Adjustment, not for a future meeting that may or may not happen. That's what I'm trying to struggle with.
Mr. Chair,
Marv.
I got some serious concerns here. I'd like to recess just us in the back room for a minute or two, please.
All right, it's 9:28. We'll be back here at 9:30.